Have you ever played a game and wished there was more? Well, sequels can quench that wish and give an opportunity for a game to be added upon without affecting the original product. Let's explore what makes a good video game sequel. New basic mechanics of a video game aren't really something that is updated in a DLC patch. This can be the whole justification for a new game's existence. Let's start off with one of the most anticipated games of 2023, Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Originally, in its predecessor, Breath of the Wild, there were 4 main mechanics: Stasis, Magnesis, Remote Bombs, and Cryonis. These would be used to interact and problem solve around the world. The game had specific areas called shrines that were created to test your skill and understanding of these 4 mechanics, while some other shrines required that you understood the physics engine of the game. That led to people doing things like this. Because of the innovative ways the systems interacted with each other, the developers created the DLC to continue their ideas. The DLC allowed for them to explore and elaborate on what they wanted to, by creating new shrines, new boss fights, and new challenges, all using these base mechanics or slightly building off of them. Although it would seem that they had too many ideas that would require different tools. That's where Tears of the Kingdom's development comes in instead. They wanted to allow players' creativity and imagination to be at the forefront. They mixed what they thought was best from Breath of the Wild with inspiration from older games such as Temples and a more story-focused game. They kept shrines but replaced the old runes with substitutes such as remote bombs to multi-purpose bombs. The new 5 runes are Recall, Use, Ultra Hand, Ascend, and Auto Build. These are all used to create a different experience that allows more creativity. While keeping most of the traversal options from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom adds plenty with the creation aspect of the game. The other approach for game mechanics is Spider-Man 2. Instead of replacing certain gameplay elements, they focused on enhancing what already existed. Examples of this are new attacks such as the mechanical arms, symbiote attacks, and enhanced electricity powers. In combat, they added new web gadgets like the Sonic Burst and Ricochet Web. Traversal options were increased with web wings, slingshot launches, and increased control of how web slinging works. These changes allowed for an improvement in freedom and creativity of the player. The way all the abilities are used are much more intuitive and easier to control by mapping each gadget to a specific input instead of choosing through a wheel that stops gameplay. Unfortunately, this is at the cost of removing some of the best gadgets from the first Spider-Man game, such as the Trip Mine and Impact Web. The skill tree, web line, and new abilities all have new and different impacts upon how you approach combat encounters in the new game. Improvements and innovations of game mechanics are a necessity for a good video game sequel. The ability to recapture the feeling of playing the original game is crucial to a sequel. That original feeling during the opening run to the edge of the cliff in Breath of the Wild or swinging for the first time in Spider-Man 2018. Tears of the Kingdom has its own moment of just falling from the sky to see how much there is all around you without telling you what to do at all. Its ability to just let you roam free and experience the environment gives the feeling of familiarity while retaining its own identity. With the inclusion of the underground and the sky, the game manages to recapture the feeling of exploring a new territory all over again. But the most impactful change is to areas you have previously explored, such as Death Mountain. In Breath of the Wild, Death Mountain sets you on fire the moment you set foot in the area, but it is now cooled down and everyone seems to be messed up for some reason. This creates a sense of familiarity and pure confusion at the same time in its new atmosphere. Spider-Man 2's ability to recapture the feeling of excitement people had while playing the original is done through the spectacle of the first mission. It has similar moments and throws you right into the middle of the action, immediately getting you hooked on the gameplay and story. While at first it doesn't feel super different, the swinging is adjusted slightly and so it gets you to recreate that up until you reach the new boss fight. This takes place in a massive arena and switches your character. The real point that the game recreates that feeling though is when you obtain the web wings for the first time. It really opens up the movement of the game and already has you excited to be able to travel around the map. Recapturing that original feeling of excitement that the player originally experiences is a great way for games to show that they are worth playing instead of just replaying the original. The importance of the story of a sequel is based completely on how the game before it handles its own. With Spider-Man, you have character arcs and a pre-established continuity you need to follow. I'm going to be going into spoilers for Spider-Man 2 and some minor spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, and so here's your warning. In Spider-Man for the PS4, Peter Parker has a character arc about being able to rely on other people. This is shown throughout the whole game as he's overprotective of Mary Jane and has to learn to actually work with Yuri and Silver Sable. In the DLC, he now has to work with Black Cat and Silver Sable once again. This all leads perfectly into him needing to teach Miles in the DLC, and off screen before Miles has his own game. In Spider-Man Miles Morales, Peter's gone and Miles is left on his own. During this game, Miles learns to become his own Spider-Man by making his own suit and proving to himself in Harlem that he is worthy of this Spider-Man moniker. Now in Spider-Man 2, Peter, after learning to rely on others, struggles with his work-life balance. At the beginning of the game, he abandons the class of students he's teaching to help Miles fight Sandman, and understandably gets fired for leaving them during an emergency. The next big instance is the entire black suit section of the game. Peter's childhood best friend Harry shows up using the symbiote to survive. They hang out and work together until Peter gets injured very badly, and Harry gives Peter the symbiote to recover. While Peter has the symbiote, he becomes extremely focused on finding a way to give Harry it back, or find him a cure to his illness. In the process of him becoming so focused, he ignores all his other responsibilities and other people. He becomes super focused on becoming the ultimate Spider-Man, telling Miles to get out of the way and he can do it without help. Because of Miles understanding what it means to be Spider-Man in his game, he can tell that Peter needs help removing the symbiote. Because of their character arcs in the previous games, their interactions feel more natural and you can see the lessons they learned impact their decision making. Without Peter's arc in the first game, Miles wouldn't have been able to have his arc in his own game and help Peter out in Spider-Man 2. While building on what was previously established is extremely important for games with strong narrative focus, the option to throw most of it out the window is there for games such as Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda decides most of what happened in Breath of the Wild is pretty much useless and removes it, other than some characters from the previous game. Tears of the Kingdom makes the game perfectly acceptable to just start playing as if it wasn't a sequel. This game feels set in the same universe more than a sequel, because of how the game is set up. While this can be a good and bad thing, this allows for more unique scenarios to take place with the same characters, without worrying too much about previously established narratives and plot devices. One thing the game really shines at is its side characters from Breath of the Wild that appear in Tears of the Kingdom. This includes the likes of Master Koga, Paya, and smaller side characters. While my favorite by far is checking Link's house from Breath of the Wild and comparing it to the house in Tears of the Kingdom. In Breath of the Wild, while Zelda's off fighting Ganon, Link has the opportunity to build his own house and customize it however he wants. He has pictures hung up of him, Zelda, and the champions, as well as weapon, shield, and bow mounts. In Tears of the Kingdom, the house looks much more lived in, and Zelda added her own secret room in it. New pictures are set up everywhere, and journals that were written by Zelda are in the Welland house. These journals detail what she's been doing since the calamity from Breath of the Wild ended. It expands upon the characters and adds a nice atmosphere all around the world that makes it feel lived in. Overall, a sequel should focus more towards new ideas, continue or examine different aspects of the story and characters, and recapture the feeling of what it's like to play the game for the first time.